I think that the owners are prepared to share in some manner the fact that we have a better TV contract than we had before with players, and some of the more financial basic things. What we don't want to have happen is where we lose our hometown heroes to one or two cities that have got a whole lot more money than other people got. And
you're talking about free agentry.
Well, how far can that go without just one team being in position to buy whatever they want? And of course, all that does is destroy the weaker franchises in the smaller communities.
In the early going, it looked like a Braves runaway. Bob Watson accounted for 3 of Atlanta's first 4 runs with 2 homers. The first here in the second off Jerry Royce, a 2-run blast deep to left gave the Braves a 2-1 lead. Same inning, Rafael Ramirez singles through the hole at short. Bruce Benedict scores from third. 3-1 Braves, and they led it 6-1 after 4. But Rick Mailer couldn't hold the lead. Top of the 5th, Ken Landreau greets him with a 2-run blast to right. That cut it to 6-3 Braves. After Atlanta got 2 in the 5th, Ron Say touched Mailer for another 2-run homer just out of the reach of Rufino Linares in right. It's now an 8-5 game after 6. After pecking away, the Dodgers finally grabbed the lead with a 5-run 7th. Landreau had another homer to make it 8-7. Then Steve Garvey rips this 2-out single to right off Steve Bedrosian, scoring Dusty Baker from second with the tying run. Pinch hitter Ron Renicky then gave the Dodgers the lead with another single to right off Carlos Diaz. Garvey and Bill Russell score. L.A. leads it 10-8. The Braves add one in the 9th, but fall short as Steve Howe gets Claudel Washington to ground out with 2 men on to win the game. The Dodgers take the first of 2 and a wild one, outslugging the Braves 10-9. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
Certainly I know the court, and the court has much said so in its opinion, have a great deal of respect and admiration for Coach Bryant, as does every other individual and citizen of our state. It is we are a government of laws, Don, and not of men, and I repeat that, but that is the essence of this lawsuit. As a practical matter, I think there are a number of ways that Coach Bryant can continue his brilliant career of coaching, but this was not the way, and we're very pleased that the court upheld the rule of law and ruled in our favor.
Don't try to let the price of gold go up.
Sent them around the city to look for hidden items, and took about half an hour to an hour for them to go around. Then they came back here and went into the cordoned off area that we have out on the ball field and looked for a treasure chest and picked one up, and one of them had the pound of gold.
I was surprised there were 6 other members in front of me, contestants, and all of them had second prize, and after the 6th one opened up the box, I was kind of surprised then because I knew I had it.
Yes, you will. This lady right here is going to take all the information. You're going to give this lady. Okay. Betty and Linda. Okay. Y'all can hold them, no problem at all.
I'll hold one of them for you. I'll hold this one out of the way. Hi, y'all.
Just be relaxed.
When the Speaker for the Alabama House of Representatives representatives arrived at the rally in Independence, he wasted no time before starting to greet the crowd.
Good to see you all.
That took a while. Several hundred people showed up for barbecue, watermelon, and free music.
Hold me close and love me. Tell me it won't end. Feels so right.
As Mr. McCorkadale moved through the crowd, he got questions, not only about his campaign, but about current issues like property taxes.
Well, I'm just now building, and I heard so much about it.
That's right.
Somebody said
it's gone and gone up and up. And I passed the bill and got the governor to sign it. It's law now that up to a $40,000 house, there's no state property tax due at all.
After enjoying some barbecue himself and a little more person-to-person politicking, the speaker finally grabbed a microphone and addressed the whole group.
This is really the way that a campaign should be run. You know, you go to these places that are so formal and you don't get to talk to people, you don't get to visit with them, they don't get to ask you any questions. I've had a lot of people ask me some questions already today, and it's good. This is the way it should be.
The organizer of the rally today said it was intended to boost support for the speaker's campaign, as well as recruit campaign workers. For many of the people, though, it was just a chance to meet their candidate face-to-face, and for some, a chance to have a little fun. Reporting from Independence, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Dale County Commissioner Gene Snell has been the subject of an Ethics Commission probe since April. The Commission's Executive Director, Melvin Cooper, says he wrote to Snell on July 26th, saying the Commission had decided Snell may have violated the Alabama ethics law.
The Commissioner may well have violated the ethics law and that he could have used county equipment and personnel to do work on his own personal or private property. Attorney General Graddick has issued a number of opinions stating that in those counties that do not permit the use of county equipment, it's against the law for a commissioner to use county equipment and personnel to do work on private property. And then thirdly, there were some instances in our opinion that the competitive bid law was not followed.
Cooper says he forwarded the case to the Attorney General's office, which sent the case on to the District Attorney in Dale County. The case could simply end there after an investigation, or go on to a grand jury for possible indictment. The Attorney General's office says the alleged violations occurred in March of this year. Snell took office in 1980. He defeated incumbent Grady Hardin, who had to repay the county more than $2,000 for using county equipment and materials on private property. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
They came back in and pulled out the guns and told everybody, hit the floor, put your head down, said it was arrest, give up all the money. Then they started saying something about a black liberation army.
The City Hall courtroom in Robertsdale was filled with the 36 defendants, their families, and supporters. They were arrested last Saturday morning near Perdido Bay for net fishing in closed waters. Defense attorney Red Wilkins was prepared to base the fishermen's case on two grounds. One, that the constitutional privileges of the fishermen to earn a living had been violated, and two, if the seafood business is considered an industry, the Conservation Department statute should not be applied to the fishermen. But District Attorney Larry Sutley wasn't prepared to try the case today.
The setting of this hearing, I was not aware that I was going to try this case.
It was his understanding that he and a former defense attorney representing the fishermen would ask for a continuance today. But that attorney was replaced by Wilkins.
And I benefit from everything these guys do, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate the industry. I think we need it for this county. Our position is, though, that this case is going to have to be tried, and we are going to have to test it on the constitutional issue.
Although the judge understood the plight of the fishermen,
my sympathy are really with you as a commercial fisherman.
he granted a continuance anyway. How did the defense feel about today's actions?
Always obey and any laws, any procedures of our courts, and that's fine. That's the way Judge Epperson ruled. That's what he thought was fair, and we don't question that.
The new date is set for August 6th at 9 a.m. in Robertsdale.
Since April of last year, Mobil Oil Company has sought permission to produce the natural gas these exploratory wells located beneath Mobile Bay. Early this evening, the company got what it wanted, but with some 17 strings attached. Strings in the form of conditions aimed at preventing environmental damage to Mobile area waters.
Primarily, the conditions are that they have to adhere to a very, very strict monitoring process. And they have to file with the Corps of Engineers a $100,000 bond or proof of $100,000 bond that in such time as the drill structures are completed that they will be removed from the bay. They also have to adhere to any and all conditions imposed by the Alabama Water Improvement Commission, the Oil and Gas Board, and the Coastal Area Board.
These exploratory gas wells have already been the subject of environmental controversy. The State Oil and Gas Board and Alabama's Attorney General is investigating the illegal dumping of wastewater from the rigs. Today, Mobil Oil Company executives appeared before the board to tell their side of the illegal dumping story, while scientists were busy conducting environmental and biological studies at the dump site. Corps of Engineers officials say the conditions attached to the production permits were attached because of this controversy.
We want to make sure that that sort of thing does not occur again.
Mobil must now accept the conditions before signing the permit and proceeding with its plans for 15 production wells. Meanwhile, Exxon's request to drill 3 exploratory wells in Mobile Bay was also approved today.
It was called the 10th Annual Southern Commodity Producers Conference and Trade Show. It drew about 2,000 farmers during its 3-day run. It was a chance for dealers to show their wares.
But the problem with you installing it is if you have a problem and you call the dealer, he's probably going to charge you the service.
Yeah, sure.
But
cotton, the world's most widely used fiber.
It was a chance for the farmers to pick up some free advice. And it was a chance for at least some of the crowd to once again be reminded the economy isn't doing so well.
When you can't take capital and create jobs with it, we got problems.
Goodwin Myrick is the president of the Farm Bureau Federation. He says the trade show each year is to let farmers see the most modern available farm equipment. But this year, there were almost 20 less dealers displaying their products.
You don't see any of the major farm machinery dealers here. No big tractors, no big equipment here. The buying power of the farmers has been reduced such that they're just not here.
Mr. Myrick says the farmers have been hit hard by the economy.
Yes, sir, very definitely, very definitely. And I think the realization of that will come this fall when the farmers have to settle up with their creditors. With the prices of the product that they have to sell and the cost of the money that they've used to make these crops with and have had to carry some of those debts forward for a few years, the crunch is really going to come this fall.
Many of the farmers listened to 4 gubernatorial candidates speak at the conference, trying to get some idea of what the future might hold. For now, all many of them can do is wait.
But if we do have a deficit of $150 billion, as the Office of Budget is projected, this is going to put pressure on the money markets. And if these rates go back up, which some people are predicting, Lord help us.
Reporting from Birmingham, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
I want to get you in the background now.
Both at full power right now, and you can see the difference in the performance characteristics of the two tanks.
There's no tank like it. The Russians don't have one. No one has one like it that's equal to this. The speed, the firepower, the ability to take a hit, the ability of the gyros in it to hold a target even in rough terrain at 35 or 40 miles an hour is just an unbelievable piece of equipment.
You're sitting there right on top of the machine. How would you compare a ride in something like that to anything civilians might know about?
Well, it's kind of like riding a fast tractor.
I don't know where y'all know this or not, but they filled this tank full of diesel fuel and ammunition. And we shot everything we had at it on our own tanks, our anti-tank missiles, completed that out on the experiment grounds, and after full firing, a mechanic from Chrysler Corporation got into the tank and drove it away. So the only problem we've got now is how to build about 10,000 of them real quick. But it's a tremendous weapon.
Ready to fight the war. Still doing, sir. How you doing? I see you found us. Yes, sir. Good. Yeah.
They expect you to work hard, and my philosophy is that I can adjust to anything, and I'm going to try to, and I can do anything for just a few months if that's what it's going to take to really get me in shape and do my best job, because I'm not just representing myself anymore. See, I'm representing the whole state, and I have a lot of people counting on me, and I don't want to disappoint them.
Two officers with Alabama's Bureau of Investigation and the City Police Department say they waited and watched as 3 men stole this 18-wheeler from the Ross Neely Trucking Terminal in Montgomery about 2 o'clock this morning. Acting on a tip, Lieutenant Tommy McGee and Corporal Ed Polk arrested 3 suspects at a Montgomery motel about 7 hours later.
We just followed the truck from the time that it was stolen until the time it was recovered.
And what territory did it cover there?
South Montgomery County.
The truck was loaded for delivery with 266 cases of cigarettes, cigars, and chewing tobacco.
The cargo is worth some $79,000, and the truck is valued at some $6,000, with the trailer of approximately $1,500 to $2,000.
The total load is said to be worth more than $86,000. Theft of property charges have been filed against 35-year-old Raymond Crystal of Greenville, 30-year-old Duffy Lee Franks, and 26-year-old Charles Manning Whitten, both of Prattville. All 3 are in the Montgomery County Jail under $100,000 bond each. The truck and its cargo have been returned to Ross Neely. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
It's not going to cost you much, but it's going to cost you. Today you'll have to pay to visit those beaches on the west end of Dauphin Island. They're owned by the West Dauphin Corporation, and people there say that in order to develop some of those natural areas and offset taxes along those beautiful beaches, they will have to charge a fee.
Taxes and every other thing have gone up, and we've been unable to develop the island due to certain problems, and at this time we feel that that's the only way we can realize any money from this tremendous asset that we have.
It's going to cost you $2 per person if you're an adult and $1 if you're a child. The fee is not set to keep anyone off the beaches. People are welcome there, and it won't affect the east end of the island. It's too early to tell how beach goers or comers will react to the new tariff, and today was not the best day to find out. Too much rain. But when the rains do clear, your trip to Dauphin Island beaches will be a little more expensive, but owners say still worth it.
If you want a margarita at the lumber yard, you'll need a few dollars and an ID proving you're 21. The legal age is 19, but the owners of Mobile's newest bar refuse to serve young drinkers. They say the reasons are to reduce rowdiness and poor tipping.
I do know that people over 21 do tip my help much better, and they work for a living.
Do you have much problem with the 19 and 20-year-olds coming in and maybe getting a little rowdy? They can't handle their liquor. Is that a problem?
Oh, yeah. Well, you 40-year-olds are hard to handle sometimes, so, I think you ought to go on up to 21.
McDonald and Busby say alcohol-related accidents is another reason they support raising the legal age. Bar owners can now be held responsible for serving too much liquor to a patron who gets in a wreck. That's raised insurance rates and made owners wary of younger customers just discovering bourbon and beer. Police also agree that alcohol and young people don't mix. They, too, want the age raised for safety reasons.
If you've got a 21-year age limit, you're not going to have a 19-year-old going out and giving it to his girlfriend who's 16 or his buddy who's 15 or 16 in this category.
And you think that is going on now that it's 19?
Well, I'm sure it's going on. Yes, we run into it quite a bit out here.
Police and proprietors admit raising the age won't cut out teenage drinking altogether, but they contend it'll make it a little harder for the youngsters to find a drink, and that should reduce some of the problems.
I don't believe it's ethical for a county road commissioner to take tax monies that's for the use of the public roads and use that money to work on private roads. And we've found this. Susan, we've even been given pictures of this being done. People will go out with Polaroid cameras and take pictures of work being done on a private driveway, that sort of thing, and send them to us.
He was probably no more than a few minutes old when abandoned Wednesday, and as he's being cared for at Sacred Heart Hospital tonight, the questions of who he is and where his parents may be remain unanswered.
The baby, now known as John Doe for purposes of identification, was placed here just a few feet from the front doorstep of the Pine Forest United Methodist Church. Wrapped in a blue and white tablecloth and lying on a bed of towels, the child had been out in the elements for up to 10 hours before being discovered by two women on their way to a prayer meeting.
Despite a slight sunburn from being outside, at 6 pounds 3 ounces, John is remarkably healthy. Antibiotic injections are being given as a precaution since nothing is known about the conditions under which he was born. Sheriff's investigators admit they have no clues as to the youngster's identity.
Right now, we've just about exhausted all our leads. Hopefully, the child's mother will turn up in a hospital somewhere seeking treatment.
and we'll get word of this and can follow it up on that aspect.
Even if the mother is found, the state will likely become John's guardian.
In the beginning, it looked like it might be a long day at Talladega. Before the field had made 4 laps, there were already 2 caution flags. But past that, there were only 3 yellow flags, what turned out to be one of the cleanest races to ever run at the Alabama International Motor Speedway. In the early going, the Mountain Dew Buick of Darrell Waltrip grabbed the lead and held on to it for about the first third of the race. From there, a number of drivers, including Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, Buddy Baker, Bobby Allison, Neil Bonnet, and Terry Labonte, all at one time had the lead in a race that saw 39 lead changes among 11 drivers. As the race moved past the halfway point, it became obvious it was going to the wire. Then, as the drivers moved into the final 10 laps, it had become a 6-man race, with Baker, Petty, Yarborough, Labonte, and Allison all chasing Waltrip for the lead. The only one to fall by the wayside was Bobby Allison, who ran out of gas with just 5 laps to go. As they headed into turn 4 of the final lap, it became a race to the finish line between Waltrip and Baker. As more than 100,000 people rose to their feet, Baker attempted the slingshot past Waltrip down the stretch. But Waltrip held on by less than 4 feet to become the first repeat winner in the 14-year history of the race.
That car that was a slow car in front of me really helped. I got a draft off of him and pulled me along a little extra down the back straightaway, which would have kept Baker from getting up to me and getting around me. I knew if I could beat Baker to the 3rd turn, I could win the race, and after that, it was just a drag race.
You think that was the critical point in the race for you?
By all means, when it's the checkered flag's waving, that's critical.
Darrell Waltrip wins the Talladega 500. Buddy Baker finishes 2nd. Richard Petty was 3rd. For the win, Waltrip takes home over $58,000. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports, reporting from Talladega.
Passed immediately to give the victim the same rights. More than anything else, I want to work together to unify law enforcement, sheriff's departments, local police department, state offices, to the end that we share information, work together to stop what I consider a real growing drug problem in the state of Alabama. We've got marijuana shipped in, flown in, even homegrown, and that leads to other problems. And we need to make a concerted effort to stop that, because a large part of our crime is rooted in the drug problem. I know something about that, and I want to do something about it statewide. Carolina felt because business and education work so closely together in the research triangle. But to elevate the whole state, we've got to make sure that we were willing to spend the money for research, because to me, research is to jobs as fertilizer is to farming. That if we don't spend the money for that, and get our technology and get our business and education working together, then we're going to continue to have the same problems that we've been talking about forever. That we must elevate the entire standards of the state, and we can do that.
You've mentioned that some of the...
Speaking as a taxpayer, Lee says Camp should resign because he's not devoting his full attention as commission president. Instead, Lee says Camp is spending his time and the taxpayers' money on the campaign trail.
Last week, he spent 3 days in Washington, not on state business, but rather on a political junket trying to raise money from various political interest groups.
Undaunted, Camp says he's not going to resign.
Yes, I'm a candidate for Congress, and I very much want to be the congressman from the 2nd District. The duties here at the Public Service Commission will be fully attended to. That comes first.
For Lieutenant Governor.
Camp's resignation,
When he did this, he said, I quote, "I have learned that the PSC is not effective as a means of serving our people."
Mercer Stone says Lee should withdraw for using the racial slur aimed at Camp. Lee called the comment
that
an
I'm very sorry for having made.
And apologized.
I would simply say this, that I prove that I'm human, that I made a mistake. I apologize to those people who I may have offended, but those people who are working in my campaign and who know me, both black and white, realize that the person portrayed in that story is not the person that they know.
Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
This was 1 year ago, the president of the Montgomery Patco local, C.J. Favre.
I don't feel like the supervisory personnel here in Montgomery are qualified to work the traffic.
Take it. Take it. Come on, back up. That's the way. Good.
And this is Favre today, working at his new profession as a dog trainer.
Well, my views of the FAA haven't changed. I think they're still terrible employers, and from the information we get from the inside, things haven't changed. The FAA is still using their same labor management techniques.
The atmosphere is 100% improved, that the people are strictly here to provide the service to the user. And
Ed Stoddard is the facility chief in charge of the control tower at Danley Field, the same position he held a year ago.
Prior to the strike, that was the main topic, and people were preoccupied with it. Now we have a lot of new people in here. They're primarily interested in learning the job and getting on board as full controllers.
The Federal Aviation Administration says the system is now up to 83% of its pre-strike capacity. Airport authorities say business is bad, but the controllers' strike played only a part in a decline in airline business that started in 1979.
I prefer it the way it is now.
I'd do it again if the working conditions were the same as they were a year ago. And
Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
When Charles Braddock took office as Attorney General, his salary was $39,500. Now it's $58,000, even though the Constitution says an elected official can't receive a pay raise while in office.
I think probably the quickest way to go about resolving this would be to ask the highest court in the state, the Alabama Supreme Court, to give us an advisory opinion, or give them an advisory opinion on whether or not the legal advice they got was correct.
The Attorney General says if the Supreme Court decides the raise is illegal, he'll pay it back. Montgomery Attorney Julian McPhillips, one of Braddock's opponents for Attorney General in 1978, thinks Mr. Braddock should pay the money back immediately.
I think this is blatantly unconstitutional. I mean, it's just open and shut, clear as can be, night and day.
that it's a violation of the state constitution.
McPhillips has given the Attorney General 1 week to respond. Otherwise, McPhillips says he'll file suit in circuit court despite the Attorney General's quest for an opinion from the Supreme Court. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Rapidly.
To state some concerns that I have.
A few hours or a few days, and I guarantee the fire company they're going to have their fair day. I just feel like in the best interest of the ratepayers of the state of Alabama, we don't know what the upturn might be in the next 30 days. If the economy can turn around a little, if industry can pick up part of the load that it's lost as far as power is concerned, then things could turn around a little, and all of those things are going to help the ratepayer.
Need to, we're willing to work. In just a few moments, and should we have any members of the public here that do not wish to officially intervene but would like to make a statement for the record, we'll certainly give you an opportunity to do so. But before we use an attorney.
Paper that I am very sorry for having made, I would simply say this, that I prove that I'm human, that I made a mistake. I apologize to those people who I may have offended, but those people. And last week, he spent 3 days in Washington, not on state business, but rather on a political junket trying to raise money from various political interest groups.
The duties here at the Public Service Commission will be fully attended to. That comes first. I'm at the Public Service Commission now. I will be during these power company hearings. With pride to the record here at the public.
Days, and then it goes on the ballot. That's what the law says and the Constitution. Talking about our criminal code, and that's the tool of trade that law enforcement, prosecuting attorneys, and judges operate by. And then you're talking about gearing the state to control in a positive fashion post-secondary education, and those controls are not there for me or the next governor or the next legislature. So you're talking about fundamental restructuring. Again, back to this real reform, cuts cross grain, real reform. The fact of the matter is, when you boil it down, we have the money to build 3 prisons. It's necessary to protect the public, and we have 2 under construction. I'm headed out to West Coast, to the Silicon Valley with a contingency from Huntsville, namely their city and county officials and the industrial. Prior to that, in 1952, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that you could have voluntary prayer in schools.
This was the second meeting between the Citizens Committee and the local legislative delegation. The committee is trying to get the delegation's unanimous support of a proposed constitutional amendment to offset expected property tax increases due to a federal court-ordered reappraisal of property values. But Representative Alvin Holmes, who missed both meetings, says he knows the Citizens Committee's bill will only help rich landowners, and he says he intends to oppose the proposed bill. But the rest of the local delegation voted to support the proposal. Currently, residential property is taxed on 10% of its fair market value. The proposed bill would drop that to 6.5%. The proposed bill would also drop commercial property assessment from 20 to 13% of its fair market value. The bill would also allow those few city and county governments that have taken other steps to offset the expected tax increases to erase their action in order to avoid a double reduction of taxes. But the Citizens Committee says it won't go along with an idea to allow local governments the option of accepting these reduced assessment rates, saying local governments haven't shown any initiative to reduce taxes on their own. The chairman of the Citizens Committee, Richard Jordan, says he intends to lobby all legislators for passage of this bill during the expected special session next week. Even if he's successful, the proposed tax assessment reduction wouldn't take effect until next year, meaning those expected tax increases will be paid at least this year. But Jordan says he'll be happy just knowing the committee's been able to offset taxes in the future. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Today's paper
Lee called on Camp to
that
resign
I'm
first.
very sorry for
he
having
says Camp
made.
has been on the road
I would simply
campaigning,
say
spending
this, that I
his
prove that
time
I'm
and the
human,
taxpayers' money to
that I
further
made a
his
mistake.
own political
I apologize,
goals.
not worthy
He says Camp has
of
abused
remaining
his
in
office
office on
rather
the
than
state
working
payroll.
for the people of
Therefore,
Alabama.
it is time that
Lee
he
says
resign
the
this
best reason
position so
Camp should resign is this.
statement he made himself when he went home to Coleman County to announce his candidacy for lieutenant governor. When he did this, he said, I quote, "I have learned that the PSC is not effective as a means of serving our people," end quote. By his own actions and by his own words, the president of the Public Service Commission has indicated that he is not worthy of remaining in office on the state payroll.
But as expected, Camp isn't going to resign. He compared Lee's request to a losing football team complaining about the game's officiating. But the resignation requests didn't stop there. Mercer Stone entered the feud, calling on Lee to withdraw because of a racial slur he made during a campaign appearance last week. Lee apologized for the comment, saying he takes full blame for
There
the
was a
statement.
statement in
He
yesterday's
says he made a
paper
mistake.
that
He's
I
human,
am very
and
sorry
he's
for having made.
Kim Davis,
I would simply
WSFA
say this,
TV
that I
News.
prove that I'm human, that I made a mistake. I apologize to them.
I say we shall have no more marriage. Those that are married already, all but one shall live. The rest...
To be or not to be. A quote from Hamlet, as performed here in a high school auditorium in Anniston. The players are all professional actors, brought together by director Martin Platt, the man responsible for Shakespeare in Alabama.
It just took off and grew, and it was kind of like I was filling a vacuum for theater, and I didn't know whether or not that vacuum existed or not. I guess found out that it did.
Frank Rader plays Polonius, a counselor to the king in Hamlet. This is his first summer in Anniston, and Rader says it's marvelous.
I have loved it here. It's a wonderful place to work. Marvelous place to work. I had worked several years in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and there seems to be an atmosphere here that is very conducive to the artist and to creativity. And the audiences have been marvelous. And I was most pleasantly surprised by the facility, and Martin Platt is a wonderful man to work with.
Soon the festival moves to Montgomery, into a new permanent theater home. More on that tomorrow night. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News, reporting from Anniston.
The president of the Montgomery Patco local, C.J. Favre, doesn't make his living controlling airplanes anymore. These days, he makes his living controlling dogs. He's now a professional dog trainer.
Well, my views of the FAA haven't changed. I think they're still terrible employers, and from the information we get from the inside, things haven't changed.
Favre says most of the members of the Montgomery Patco local have found other work.
They're very proud people. They knew what we did was right, and our biggest, downfall was being out publicly maneuvered by the Reagan administration.
Out at the control tower at Danley Field, they're rebuilding the system.
I prefer it the way it is now. We have people that want to work together and come in here that want to do the job, whereas before we had people come in before that wanted to further the union goals and create confrontation. And that's not a pleasant atmosphere to work in.
The facility chief, Ed Stoddard, says he now has 4 controllers, 11 trainees, and 2 military controllers, and things have never been better.
I think by the elimination of the preoccupation with the strike, that the atmosphere is 100% improved.
The Federal Aviation Administration says the system is handling 83% of the traffic it handled before the strike. By May of next year, air traffic should be back to its pre-strike numbers. As for Favre, he wouldn't change a thing.
I don't think it was in vain. It's going to eventually, hopefully, somebody will look very critical towards the FAA and their labor management problems, and hopefully the controllers of the future will have it better than we did.
Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Just about everyone was ready for today's hearing, except Commissioner Lane Greer. He made the motion to put it off for another month. Montgomery attorney Sally Greenhaw, who's representing the Alabama League of Aging Citizens and the Alabama Black Caucus on Aging, was ready. She filed a petition with the commission to help small-use residential customers over the age of 60 get lower rates.
Senior citizen rates and conservation or low-energy rates have been adopted in other states. Florida has them. I know Iowa and Illinois, Minnesota, they're all over the country, and I think it's time that we did something here in Alabama.
Kelly Currington, who's campaigning for a commission post, was ready. He filed a complaint with the PSC asking for an investigation of the energy cost factor and the underlying fuel costs of Alabama Power. Reuben Hanna, president of the Alabama League of Aging Citizens, was ready. He wants the commission to appoint attorneys and expert witnesses to defend the senior citizens' position before the PSC during rate cases. And, of course, the power company was ready. Power company attorney Rod Mundy argued that the delay would hurt the company's ability to fully present its rate request. But Commissioner Greer thinks otherwise.
Well, first of all, we'll have 6 weeks, and we guarantee the power company they'll have a fair hearing. 6 weeks is plenty of time. The Supreme Court can decide a case in just a matter of a few hours or a few days. And I guarantee the power company they're going to have their fair day. And I just feel like in the best interest of the ratepayers of the state of Alabama, we don't know what the upturn might be in the next 30 days.
Elmer Harris, an executive vice president with Alabama Power, feels Commissioner Greer has leaned too far in the direction of the customers and is not giving the power company a fair shake. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Well, it's a big thrill. You know, we felt like going in that somebody was going to win it a second time, and we hoped it would be us. I don't believe there's been a race car to run this track, and not in the 10 years I've been running here, that dominated this race the way mine did today. It just runs superbly all day, and I feel like we'd win it if we didn't have no trouble.
Okay, you came out the winner, obviously, but what was your biggest problem to overcome?
Didn't have any problems, none whatsoever. It was a beautiful race.
Super. Attorney General Graddick says he's been thinking over the recent legal questions about his pay raise and decided the quickest way to resolve the issue would be to get an advisory opinion from the Supreme Court.
If the court says that I should pay back the money, I'm going to pay back the money, because obviously that court would be telling me that it wasn't justified and that the advice that I got from the finance director and legal advisor was not correct. Now, like any other human being, it would be kind of tough. I'd have to go to the bank and borrow it, and I'd pay it back.
Mr. Graddick says he accepted the $9,000 a year raise only after Finance Director Rex Rayner had it cleared through the governor's legal advisor. Montgomery attorney Julian McPhillips wants Attorney General Graddick to go ahead and pay the raise back. McPhillips wrote a letter to Mr. Graddick, the Finance Director, State Treasurer, and State Controller, demanding the termination of the raise. According to McPhillips, he'll begin legal action next week if he receives a negative response to the letter. He says at this time, Mr. Graddick's request for an advisory opinion doesn't affect his possible legal action. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
The governor says he wants lawmakers to consider his reforms to the state's criminal code and the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. But what about his retirement reform?
We're going to get that a little later.
The governor says later means a special session in late August or early September. As for the reforms he'll offer to the legislators next week, the governor says they are also real reforms that cut cross-grain. Governor James says he won't ask for the traditional address to the lawmakers on the first night of the session, saying he's addressed the House and Senate members on these two reform issues on a number of other occasions.
But I have addressed them on 6 or 7 occasions already regarding those two issues, and I think they're quite familiar with them.
On another issue, the governor brought his legal advisor and lawyer into the news conference to help battle Secretary of State Don Siegelman's efforts not to include the governor's proposed budget isolation constitutional amendment on the primary ballot. The governor says he's received a commitment by over half the state's probate judges to include the issue and says he's still considering legal action against those judges who refuse to include the measure. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol. The Citizens Committee's proposed bill is aimed at reducing the taxes on residential and commercial property. Currently, residential property is taxed on 10% of its fair market value. The proposed bill would drop that assessment to 6.5%. The suggested bill would also drop the assessment on commercial property from 20 to 13%. The committee's chairman, Richard Jordan, said this would effectively offset the expected 40 to 50% increases in taxes due to the federal court-ordered reappraisal of property values. Last week, the members of the local delegation considered drafting the bill to allow local governments the opportunity to accept the reduced tax rates, but Mr. Jordan doesn't think that's a good idea.
I've seen very little activity around the state, and it looks like we're just going to have to make it mandatory. That if we're going to get anything done, it's going to have to be through the legislature.
The Montgomery City Council is scheduled to consider a reduction of its millage rates, also designed to offset that tax increase. If that passes and later the committee's proposed bill passes, the city would experience a double reduction in taxes. Mr. Jordan says for that reason, the committee's bill would allow cities that have taken this type action to return millage rates to 1981 levels without a separate statewide vote as required by law. Mr. Jordan admits there is one drawback to his bill. That is, relief wouldn't take effect until next year, meaning those expected increases will be paid this year. The delay in relief is because the committee's proposed bill would offer an amendment to the state constitution, and if passed during the expected August special session, couldn't be voted on by the people in time to take effect on taxes due in October. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Alabama Development Office out getting industry. We've got to have businessmen who understand a particular business. Now, we've done this here in Montgomery. If we're going after a company and try to get them to come to Alabama, we get people who understand their business, who understand their financing, who understand their labor. And we go and try to show them why they would be profitable, why it would be profitable to them to move to Montgomery. And I believe that approach will work statewide. Funny thing to me is that they're all talking about their vast years of experience in state government. And I find it very amusing because I find their experience to be their indictment, that they can't solve the problems because they are the problems. They've been there all this time. They've been working in state government in positions of leadership. Yet on our menu today, we still have all the problems before us that they supposedly have been there solving. Every one of them that they're talking about and I'm talking about are the ones that they're supposed to have been handling.
According to figures from the National Weather Service, Montgomery has received nearly 15 inches of rain the past 3 months, which translates into better than 10.5 inches above normal for the year. That means there's more water pouring into rivers, lakes, and hydroelectric dams. At the same time, hydro dams have been churning out more electricity. The Farley nuclear plant has been operating in an efficient manner. Combined, it means low-cost electricity for the state, and a change in the energy cost recovery factor used by Alabama Power.
And this has brought the level of energy cost recovery to where ratepayers have paid in about $29 million more than what was actually the cost of energy over the past 3 or 4 months. We're setting for hearing on, I believe it's August the 23rd, to hear the ECR mechanism and try to bring down those rates commencing September the 1st or earlier.
That wasn't the only business the PSC had on the agenda. Hearings were scheduled to get underway on Alabama Power Company's request for a $454 million increase in rates. But before the first witness in the case could be called, Commissioner Lynn Greer made a motion to postpone the hearing until September the 1st. Commissioner Jim Folsom voted for Greer's motion, and power company attorneys objected because they say a month and a half is not enough time to hear the case. Greer disagrees and said his decision to delay the hearing was based on the current economic situation.
If the economy can turn around a little, if industry can pick up part of the load that it's lost as far as power is concerned, then things could turn around a little, and all of those things are going to help the ratepayer.
Don Phelps, WSFA TV News. Economy.
Decided that people look at candidates as a heartless, selfish group of people who are only concerned about themselves and winning a race. I feel that this is the time of the year when people are looking at us, and there's something maybe we can do for charity to show that we're not that heartless group of people that the public seems to think candidates. Tentatively, we have decided that we will try to get it going sometime around August 23rd. Presently, I have spoken to each one of the other candidates personally on the telephone or in person, and they seem to think it's a good idea, Mr. Taylor and Mr. Hartzell. However, candidate Mitchell told me that he would be too busy and he would not be able to make the walk.
This morning was the start of a journey that will go right to the Supreme Court. And as I said earlier, I am delighted that Congress is moving in the same direction. And I would predict that before we see Christmas time in 1983, voluntary prayer in our public schools will once again be a reality in these United States.
10% of the 65.
See, the ratio factor now is 10. If the amount 10%, lower the ratio from 6 to 35.